I really envy those that do the TED Talk. I've never done one, but they have my admiration. I have some prepared remarks to give you, and hopefully I'll share some information about Saudi Arabia you didn't know, and both past and present. So, of course, I'm thrilled to be here at GetGlobal this year and to have the opportunity to talk about Saudi Arabia these days. And of course, unless you've completely given up listening to or reading the news, you know that Saudi Arabia has been the focus, of course, of global media for the last month. So let me start out first by saying that what happened to Jamal Khashoggi in the Saudi consulate in Istanbul last month was an atrocious and horrific act. For those of us who have spent many years being close to Saudi Arabia and its people, we know that it's antithetical to their values and their sense of humanity. The story's captivated the world's attention, and I have received numerous requests for interviews and commentary over the last month, and I have declined all of them. And that's really because there are active investigations going on in the kingdom, and as some companies speak out, I have chosen as a membership organization not to do that until the investigations are all done. So, my comments at this conference are my first that I'll talk about the Jamal Khashoggi case in public. And although I don't want my comments remarks today to completely be overshadowed by the Jamal Khashoggi case, I will comment on the U.S.-Saudi angle and the perceived fallout from the killing of Mr. Khashoggi. Again, I don't want it to dominate my remarks. Although, since this has been well publicized and there have been reported adverse consequences to business, I will make some comments a little later on. But the subjects of my remarks concerning today are concerning the challenges and opportunities for modern Saudi Arabia with a view to its future. So there are a few topics I want to cover before I close with thoughts on the challenges the kingdom is facing over the Jamal Khashoggi case. So as I mentioned in the previous segment and panel that I was on, besides a short time litigating cases as a corporate attorney in New Jersey early in my professional career, most of my life's work has been spent promoting business interests of American companies around the world in foreign markets. While doing this, I have always believed acquiring foundational knowledge of a nation's history is not only helpful in sizing it up as market potential, but is practical in terms of being useful in gaining perspective on its people as well. To understand modern Saudi Arabia and the challenges that it faces today, let me provide some brief historical frames of reference. Over the years, I've heard American business executives traveling to Saudi Arabia refer to it as a nation of traders. And although this is simplistic, it is true geographically, Saudi Arabia has been a major part of the world's trade routes for thousands of years. Business has always been ingrained in Saudi culture for centuries. Agriculture, animal husbandry, and the spice trade dominated merchant activity for hundreds of years. However, when oil was discovered in 1938, just 6 years after the modern Saudi state was founded, everything changed in Saudi Arabia and they were propelled into the modern age. In 1932, the year the kingdom was established through a declaration of sovereignty by King Abdulaziz Al Saud, Saudi Arabia was one of the world's poorest countries in the world, and its major source of revenue came from visiting pilgrims during the Hajj to Saudi Arabia. In the introduction to my book, Business and Entrepreneurship in Saudi Arabia, I opened with a story of one of the kingdom's most successful and well-known businessmen, Sheikh Abdurrahman Al-Juraisi. I describe his journey as a 7-year-old boy in the late 1930s, traveling from his ancestral home 75 miles by camel to the city of Riyadh. At the time, Riyadh was not the capital of the country. At that time, Riyadh was a small village, slightly more than a mile across, and was surrounded by a thick mud wall about 25 feet high, which encircled the city, and was closed every night as its inhabitants went to sleep. In 1940, Riyadh was a very small town with fewer than 30,000 people and an economy comprised primarily of merchants and farmers. There were no overhead electricity transmission lines, no power stations, and no power regulator. There were no light bulbs in most Saudi homes, mosques, or commercial establishments. Scaled electrical power generation and the mass distribution of electricity did not come to Saudi Arabia until 1951. In those days, most Saudis were able to carry the entire contents of what they owned on the back of a few camels or a small pickup truck. Fast forward 80 years to today's modern Saudi Arabia, and we see the kingdom as having the world's 20th largest economy and a population of over 33 million. There are now 7 million people in the city of Riyadh, and it is the capital, of course. It is a sprawling metropolis with an annual growth rate of over 4% and a gross domestic product of over $16 billion. And today, there are currently $133 billion worth of electricity and power projects in the pipeline across the country. There are many challenges, of course, Saudi Arabia faces today as it strives to create a sustainable economic growth as well as a livable and enjoyable society for its people. But in the interest of time, let me just concentrate on two critically important challenges or drivers behind the crafting of major economic development and public policy in Saudi Arabia. The first driver is the kingdom's need for economic diversification. Even though the kingdom has made incredible progress in its economic growth and development over the last 80 years, its economy is still overly dependent on the production and sale of hydrocarbons. Second driver is the imperative for the kingdom in managing its youthful population. Providing economic opportunities and improving the quality of life for Saudis, particularly its youth, is a driving force behind planning for the future. Few challenges facing the country are as important as getting this right. Equipping young Saudis with knowledge and employable skills, as well as jobs, is an economic and moral imperative for the kingdom's leadership. So let's take a closer look at economic diversification. For almost 50 years, Saudi Arabia has announced economic development plans aimed at guiding the country towards growth and prosperity. In every 10-year development plan since 1970, the goal of moving the kingdom away from its over-reliance on oil has been articulated clearly. Decades later, Saudi Arabia still relies on oil and gas for 68% of its budget revenues. Although the country has brought this figure down from 90% over the last few years, it remains an impairment to sustained and fairly predictable economic growth. The kingdom also consumes domestically 25% of the oil that it brings up out of the ground and its oceans, making it the world's 5th largest energy consumer. Leadership has consistently admitted that these levels of consumption are unsustainable. Over the last 5 years, the Saudi Public Investment Fund, or PIF as it's commonly known, has been investing in leading technologies around the world, and particularly here in the United States. The PIF and the fulfillment of its responsibility are critically important parts of the kingdom's plan to diversify its economy. The PIF's numerous and well-publicized investments have already begun to grow new industries of the future for Saudi Arabia and create high-skilled jobs for its people. And certainly at the Business Council, we know that you can look forward to, here in the United States, more investments. The question of Saudi youth and the demographics. The challenges facing senior leadership when it comes to serving the needs of the nation's youth population are daunting. 60% of the Saudi population is below the age of 30. 50% is below the age of 25. In 2018, every day in Saudi Arabia, the population increases by 2,119 persons. Most Saudis under the age of 30 live with their parents. And with over 200,000 Saudi students graduating every year and an unemployment rate for Saudis in the kingdom reaching 13%, the imperative to attract job-creating foreign investment will remain a compelling factor for the Saudi leadership for many years to come. In April 2016, a year after King Salman bin Abdulaziz assumed the throne as King of Saudi Arabia, Vision 2030, the kingdom's blueprint for realizing its long-term goals and future expectations for sustained economic growth and a better society was announced. Vision 2030 is very much the brainchild of His Royal Highness Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and the Council of Economic Development Affairs, which he chairs. They have been the guiding force in implementing Vision 2030 since it was announced. Although Vision 2030 mentions the kingdom's abundance of national resources, which of course it has in minerals and gas and oil, the document states the country's real wealth, and I quote, lies in the ambition of our people and the potential of our younger generation. It refers to the country's youth as its pride and architects of its future. One of Saudi Arabia's greatest challenges as a country will be to achieve all of the goals of Vision 2030, particularly as it pertains to its youth. Educating young Saudis, equipping them with the skills needed in the 21st century, facilitating small and medium-sized businesses and startups, and continuing to improve the quality of life in the kingdom are everything young Saudis and all Saudis have come to expect from their current leadership. So it will be the satisfaction registered by this segment of the population with its leaders that will act as one of the most important litmus tests for judging Saudi Arabia's future successes. So now, towards the end here, let me comment on the Jamal Khashoggi case and the consequences to business. In the aftermath of the killing of Jamal Khashoggi and the international outrage that's ensued, we have seen a number of American companies and firms from other countries register their disapproval by distancing themselves from Saudi Arabia. The withdrawal of a number of America's top Fortune 100, top 100 and top 500 CEOs and chairmen has been well publicized from their withdrawal from the annual investment conference last week. I attended last year's investment conference. I also was there last year in May when President Trump visited the kingdom. I was there in Al Yamama Palace when all of these Fortune 500 CEOs signed their agreements. And I attended the Public Investment Fund conference this year, about 10 days ago. I was apprehensive at the lower turnout of American executives and corresponding higher attendance by Russian, Chinese, and other European and Asian competitors to the conference. What we have been looking for at the U.S. Saudi Arabian Business Council over the last month is anything to suggest that a wide-ranging and collective 180-degree turn from Saudi Arabia by American companies is developing. Weeks ago, we at the council began collecting information, calling companies, and getting commentary from them, from those companies we know are doing business in Saudi Arabia. These companies come from a wide range of industry sectors. With few exceptions, most companies have told us that although they're monitoring the situation, they have no plans to withdraw from the market. Although this has been a relief to us at the council, we understand and recognize that the Khashoggi case still has the potential to derail the historic U.S.-Saudi strategic alliance. There are those in this country calling for the end of military and technology sales to Saudi Arabia. Some have called for a moratorium on the executive branch discussions with Saudi Arabia to allow the transfers of nuclear technologies, American technologies, to Saudi Arabia to help them build their power reactors that they plan to build. Others want to see the imposition of crippling economic sanctions against the kingdom in punishment for the Khashoggi case. As we view the future of progressive modernization in Saudi Arabia, I believe if such a derailment were to take place, it would have a long-lasting and devastating effect, not only on the U.S.-Saudi strategic relationship, but equally important, It would negatively affect the prospects for greater economic performance of the Saudi economy and social improvement for Saudis, all Saudis, young and old. We know from public comments made by representatives of American companies with market interests in Saudi Arabia, there's a recognition that pulling out of the kingdom or shunning that country would not only have a negative effect on global investors' view of the kingdom as an investment destination, but would in turn hurt the Saudi people and be seen as damaging to their hopes and dreams for the future. Unless we want to drive Saudi Arabia into the arms of Russia, China, or some other foreign competitor, it is my hope that public and private sector leaders in this country will take more of a holistic approach when considering any further responses on the Khashoggi case. It is also important to remember that Saudi Arabia is one of the most valued strategic allies of the United States and has been for years in the Middle East. Saudi Arabia has been at the forefront in the fight against terrorism and has a record of working closely and admirably with U.S. anti-terrorism officials to their mutual interests and to the interests of the world. Alienating Saudi Arabia or driving them into the arms of Russia or China could have a potential adverse impact on the balance of power in the Middle East. I served in Saudi Arabia as a diplomat during some of the worst terrorist activities in the kingdom, so I know firsthand how the kingdom suffered considerably from that scourge. I hope that in the fight against terrorism, Saudi Arabia continues to be more closely aligned with us, the United States, than any other sphere of influence in the world. Protects our interests, and of course it protects theirs. In closing, let me say I view the prospects for Saudi Arabia with high optimism. The kingdom's leadership is doing all the right things when it comes to following Vision 2030 and making the necessary structural and public sector reforms needed to increase economic growth and to attract and retain the interests of foreign investors. Market reforms over the last few years in Saudi Arabia in their capital markets and financial industry have yielded significant benefits. Global market index providers Russell's, MSCI, and FITS have all announced they are adding Saudi Arabia to their emerging market indices. By some estimates, this will facilitate the inflow of capital of about $130 billion into Saudi Arabia. So on a daily basis, our council works with American companies seeking to invest in Saudi Arabia or those exploring opportunities for business relationships. Connecting these companies with leaders in the Saudi public sector and the private sector is what we do, and we do it in the facilitation of actual and verifiable deals that we keep a running list of. These deals wouldn't happen without us, and we're not saying that, no. But we do much to facilitate the deals to happen well beyond the introductions. And so we've been in business 26 years, and we look forward to another 26 years in doing what we do. So my hope, as I said, is that going forward, our government leaders here and even private sector leaders here wait for the investigation and the results there, but looking at responses to this Jamal Khashoggi crisis, I think a holistic approach where you're looking at all of the moving parts. And of course, when you talk about a relationship between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia that's lasted for 80 years, there are a lot of moving parts. And many of those moving parts affect the lives and futures of people that we may not be able to see now from public policy. But trust me, 10, 15, 20 years from now, when all of the Saudi students, and there are hundreds of thousands. Actually, there are about 169,000 a year now. That's gone down some. When all of those students are now in their middle age and they're now going to other markets in the world, and that's translated over 10, 15 years into U.S. jobs that have been lost as a result of doing a 180 against Saudi Arabia, I think in the end, we would both be losers in terms of the U.S.-Saudi relationship. Saudis are wonderful people. I've had the privilege of knowing them for quite a while. Industrious, smart, If any of you know Saudi students in this country, you can attest to that. So I hope the situation will get better, but I thank you for allowing me to speak with you today about Saudi.